for lesson 4.2, we're going to look at solving and graphing one-step inequalities. So the first one we're going to talk about is what happens with certain negative values. And this is something that happens if we multiply or if we divide by a negative. So it's very important to remember this. So make it somewhere that you're going to notice it and see it. And what we're going to do is we're going to flip the inequality sign when we multiply or divide by a negative. And no other time, only if we multiply or divide by a negative number. So then, for example, a less than would turn into a greater than. That's what we mean by flip the sign, or a greater than would become a less than. Okay, so for our examples, we're going to solve these the same way that we did when we were solving equations. Again, with that one exception, if we multiply or divide by negative, we've got to change the sign around. So on number 1, I'm going to start by, I need to get rid of this minus 10. I need to get the isolate the variable, get the x by itself. And it's being subtracted by 10. The opposite is to add 10. Remember, we're trying to get these to equal 0. And negative 10 plus 10, that makes 0, so we say that it cancels. But if I add 10 to the right side, then I've got to also add 10 to the left side. Negative 1 plus 10 is 9. And then I bring over the sign. It's less than x. Now, I don't really like seeing the x on the right-hand side. It doesn't make a difference, but if you want to rewrite that, you can. So I can put the x on the left. Notice that the big side is facing the x. So I want the big side to still face the x. The point is going towards a 9, so I want the point going towards a 9. As long as that still matches up, then these are going to be equivalent. So x is greater than 9. And we're going to go ahead and place the 9 in the middle. And then I'll go ahead and complete my number line here. And then I want an open circle at the 9 because it does not have that equal to part. So an open circle at the 9. And I want numbers for x that are bigger than 9. So 10, 11, 12, those are bigger than 9. So I'm going to shade towards those numbers that are bigger than 9. If you need to make a note off to the side on when to have open circle, when to have closed circle, go ahead and make those notes again. Number 2, even though I have a plus sign here, this 4 is negative. So to get rid of it, to make it 0, I need to have a positive 4, because negative 4 and positive 4, that makes 0. So I've got positive 4, then I need a positive 4 on the other side. Because that makes 0, then the x is by itself. I've got a less than or equal to sign. Negative 3 plus 4 is 1. I'm going to put 1 in the middle, and then I'm going to complete my number line. And then this time I want a filled in circle because it has the equal to part. So I want at 1, I got a filled in circle. I want values for x that are less than or equal to 1. So 0, negative 1, those are less than 1. And I can always check to see if I shaded the right way. I shaded towards a 0, so I can check. Well, is 0 less than or equal to 1? Yes, that means I shaded in the right direction. So we can always check our work that way. Number 3, remember from Unit 2 that this fraction bar means I'm dividing. So this really says x divided by 3. The opposite of dividing by 3 using inverse operations is multiplying by 3 on both sides. 3 over 3 is 1. And 1x, we don't have to write 1x, we just write x. We say they cancel. Is less than. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. Now, if we think back to our rule here, it says if I multiply or divide by a negative, I multiplied by positive 3. So because I multiplied by positive 3, I do not need to flip that sign around. I don't care that that negative 2 was already there. It was already there. I didn't change it. What we did is multiply by a positive 3, so the sign did not have to flip this time. But I do need then a negative 6, and I'm going to finish my 9. Be careful when you're making your number line with negative. So getting bigger is negative 5, -4, -3, -2, getting smaller, -7, -8, -9. Those can be tricky to make number lines with negatives. And then I need a open circle. I need an open circle because it does not have the equal to part. And I want values for x that are less than -6. So this direction left is less than -6. Number 4, I'm dividing by -8, so I need to multiply by -8 on both sides. Again, that's going to cancel because 8 times 1. X is, now here, I multiplied by a negative number. So because of that, that sign's going to flip. So instead of this being a less than or equal to, we're going to change it to a greater than or equal to now. And 2 times -8 is -16. So I want a -16 in the middle. Watch how you're making your number line again. And then I want a filled in circle because it can be equal to. I want for values for x that are greater than or equal to. So I'm going to shade it towards the greater than numbers, will be towards the right. Number 5, we've got a fraction. So it may be worth it to make some notes off to the side here that we're dividing fractions. That is when we did a keep, change, flip. So divide fractions, we actually ended up multiplying by the reciprocal. And that the reciprocal means we flip. So 5 over 6 would become 6 over 5, for example. So then on our number 5, I need to divide by -3/4. But dividing by a fraction, same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So -4 over 3. And that's going to make that cancel. So multiply this side by -4 over 3. So x is, I'm also multiplying by a negative, which means I've got to flip that sign around. So instead of greater than becomes less than. And then this was a 4. We're going to put this -6 over 1. So I can work with my fraction and multiply straight across the top. -6 times -4 is +24. 1 times 3 is 3. And I can actually reduce that or solve it. Oops, not equal to. X is less than 12 divided by 3. Sorry, 24 divided by 3 is 8. So I want 8 in the middle. Finish my number line. I want a open circle. I want numbers that are less than 8, so that will be to the left. So again, on this one, remember we're dividing by a fraction, but to divide by a fraction, that's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. Or we can always turn it into a decimal and work with decimals, might be easier as well. One last problem like this. We're going to divide by 2 on both sides. Because I'm dividing by +2, the sign does not change. It stays less than or equal to. -20 divided by 2 is -10. So I'm going to put -10 on my number line, and then I'm going to complete my number line. Again, watch out what you're doing with the negatives. We don't get them backwards. Then I want a filled in circle because it has the equal to part. I want values that are less than. To the left are numbers that are less than, getting smaller than -10. So any notes you want to make off to the side, if you need to know when is an open circle, when is it a closed circle, make those notes. Anything else with fractions or decimals that you want to add to help make this easier, and we'll finish the rest of this in part 2.